the Silver Screen Project.
Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
In preparation for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we went back to 1981 to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Ooh.
Is this the furthest back we've gone for the Silver Screen Project?
It might be,
It is.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
Top
yeah.
Gun was like 85, wasn't it?
Oh, just about then,
So Raiders of the Lost Ark, a classic. What did you think of this?
That's pretty much what I was going to say. It's a classic adventuring romp. I feel like you can see a lot of the tropes for things like the Mummy and stuff like that come, 10, 15 years after. But yeah, it was a really fun time watching this back. Yeah, how did you find it?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I think I probably watch it on an almost yearly basis.
Oh, really?
I think since I was about 5 years old, this has been like in my top 5 favorite films of all time.
Yeah. To be fair, I haven't seen it as much as that, but like there are bits where I'm like, yeah, I know this pretty much beat for beat.
Yeah, it's like I was kind of doing stuff on my laptop and only half watching it because I was like, I've seen this so many times. It's a phenomenally good film.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many like set pieces and just little sequences that have just been like reused and kind of almost parodied or referenced and stuff.
Yeah.
Like especially the opening sequence, which is just like iconic. Like all of that is very kind of like, oh yeah, I've seen this in other things.
Yeah. And like we don't usually go to the background of films, but when you look at this, it's like starring Harrison Ford, music by John Williams, directed Steven Spielberg, written by Lawrence Kasdan, story by George Lucas. It's like, for an early 80s film, that's about as good as it gets.
It is. It's like a winning combination, isn't it? Yeah, and you can see why we're still covering stuff like this and why this is still releasing stuff now. Yeah.
I remember seeing a YouTube video a while ago that somebody had was talking through like notes made between Steven Spielberg, Lawrence Kasdan, and George Lucas when they came up with the concept of this. And it's like George Lucas talking about like an American James Bond kind of character. Yeah. And like it's amazing how like George Lucas has got like all these great ideas. Lawrence Kasdan like knows how to put that into like a story,
a filter for it,
and then Spielberg can like direct that. Because I think straight away, I think one of the great opening scenes of it is you kind of in the forest and you see this person, but there's stuff going on.
Yeah, you're introduced to other characters almost first, aren't you, really?
And then between like the silhouette and the use of the whip, like you learn everything about his character before you even see his face. Yeah. Like it's unbelievably well directed.
Exactly what I've noted as well. There's some great little introductions to this. Even the same kind of introduction with the silhouette when he meets Marianne later with the bit in Tibet where his silhouette comes in. It's all very kind of it's that kind of pulpy film serial kind of vibe, isn't it? But kind of brought into the modern day of the early 80s.
And I think a lot of the talk of it, because it's set in the 30s, they wanted it to kind of be like that nostalgic 30s serial stuff, and you can really see it. And the opening scene as well, we're not going to go through beat by beat, but that opening bit with the classic like boulder run and the traps is one of the most iconic scenes of all time. Like
it's just fantastic stuff, really.
Like setting off all the traps with like the light and the bag of sand that he's picked up before to balance the thing. The whip and the hat grabbed from under the things, like every part of this scene has been parodied 1,000 times.
One of the ones that comes to mind is The Simpsons. There's that opening with Bart getting the change or whatever it is from Homer and
Homer bouldering down the stairs.
It's so good, and like we get some great stuff in that. We get Alfred Molina in that, who is in the opening credits, but he's only in that one scene.
Yeah, he's
also playing like a Hispanic guy, which is
a local.
I mean it's not the most egregious case of that in this film, is it? Really? With
no, with John Rhys Davis playing the Egyptian man.
I think he might be back for the new one. I've heard
that would be great.
I don't know if that's true, but
I really like him in this. Like
he is. That's the thing. He's not. It's not for me as a white man. It's not overly offensive, but like it's a little bit problematic. I think it's probably
it's one of those, like particularly in the early 80s, you just cast a white person for every role. Particularly a white man who perhaps have some features that you could easily be a different race.
Yeah, that's kind of what they were
it's
thinking.
Like the whole Ben Kingsley plays everyone that's not white. But yeah, he's great. There's a bunch of fun side characters. Marion is really fun in this, far better than some of the
later
love interests in other films.
Probably the best one, to be honest, I would say.
Yeah, it's the reason she's the one that came back for the fourth one. Belloc, the French villain guy.
I don't remember him being as fun as he is. I always remember him kind of falling into the background, but I think he's a good presence throughout.
He's good fun, and then you've got like the bald Nazi scientist guy who's just like a proper creep, and it's like
he's great. There's some great moments with him. The like torture SS guy, right? You're talking about. Yeah. There's great moments with him. There's the bit where he is in Nepal and he gets the thing burnt into his hand. That whole sequence is really fun. It's just kind of chaotic action, and it's very brutal, very violent from that point onwards. It kind of there's so much killing in this. Like
there is.
Like Indiana Jones, there's parts where like he's just smiling as he's killing people. Like in that truck chase, he just runs guys off the road. And he's just like grinning behind them. It's like he just fucking loves murdering people.
There's some great like action in this. Like you kind of, it is like an adventure film, and like he's going to get the Lost Ark. But you forget how great the action is as well. Like that car chase is just brilliant.
Well, even one of my favorite bits, without jumping around too much, the airport scene where he's like fighting the guys,
where the big guy gets
and the big guy and all
yeah.
that, and then that leads pretty much straight into the chase scene. There's a little in between bit, but and then that kind of keeps going right almost until the end. And the pacing of this film is really interesting because there's only about 15 minutes left when he gets on the sub, and you're like, how much more is going to go in this film? And they squeeze so much in.
Yeah,
it's almost like from about halfway on, it's just like it's all go.
It's one of those as well because like this is straight after an era of where films are fairly slow. I mean, George Lucas 4 years before this did Star Wars: A New Hope, which I love, but it's a slow burn the first half of it. Whereas this is, it kind of just goes at it.
It really does. Yeah. The only real break really is after the initial scene when you kind of get all the pieces in motion when he's at university and he's packing, and then it's almost up until somewhere half an hour or so later, and then it's just full pelt to the end, isn't it?
Even that university scene I really enjoy as well because you learn again so much about the character. Like he's this action adventure guy, but like he's also like this lecturer that's just like obsessed with like the mythology and all that. And I think the mythology mixed with the realism in these films is so fun as well.
And it's like, you get this great insight where we don't know until basically the end that it is real. There is this kind of extra supernatural element to it.
Yeah.
But he even says to Marcus, he's like, I don't believe in all that kind of stuff. And it's like, but maybe there is. It's like there's a thread there that goes through.
There's kind of always touching on the edge in these films of actual sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean the final scene is just like full blown. Isn't it?
But, I saw an interesting video talking about particularly that scene and talking about how this film was quite personal to Spielberg in a way because it's as much about like Jewish revenge on the Nazis as it is about like Indiana Jones. The whole thing that the Nazis are that characteristic like proper evil, like the kind of silly evil villains that are like stupid and dumb but like are just evil.
They're so focused and like almost full of themselves that they'll just keep going. Because even that whole part, is it that there's when they're going to open the Ark, they almost send it straight to Hitler, but they're like, no, we need to make sure that we don't fail, and like it's that whole thing, they killed themselves because of that.
The whole plot essentially is them basically trying to take a Jewish artifact and use it to their
as like a superpower kind of thing.
Which is very Nazi. And in the end, it's this Jewish artifact that kills the Nazis, and it's like it's great that happens.
There's so much to talk about with this. I was going to mention earlier, we kind of jumped around quite a lot with the SS guy, the main Nazi guy. One of my favorite scenes, which kind of goes into something else I was going to talk about, is when he is about to torture Marion and he's getting out the instrument and he's putting it together. It turns out it's a coat rack, and it's one of so many funny moments throughout this film. There's so much like little gags or physical comedy, some of which is like a little bit silly, but like the part where she spins the mirror around, it just bashes him in the head. It just like, I was like, I don't remember that bit. Like it's but they balance this kind of slapstick stuff with the very serious murder stuff.
Overlook the humor in this because like you said, it is still funny. And like there's like the ongoing joke, the fact that Indy hates snakes, and then obviously they end up in a big snake pit, and it's like classic. Other bits that I loved, there's the iconic bit with the guy with the sword who's waving it around.
Yeah, another very funny
Indy
bit.
Shoots
which is like, there's the whole story. We had food poisoning or something.
I think he was hungover or maybe food poisoning. Meant to choreograph the whole scene. He couldn't be bothered.
He's like, how about I just shoot him instead?
It works great. Another kind of slapstick scene is when Marion's in like the wicker basket and running around, and Indy's running around knocking them all over trying to find her.
It's such a good sequence, and the part where there's some great shots, some great cinematography in this, when he runs out and there's the close-up of his face and he has the realization and it pans out to all the baskets there. There's just some solid filmmaking in these films.
It really is like Spielberg at his best. Some of the shots you have, and it's just like kind of the way the camera moves, and sometimes you see it a lot in that university scene where it's kind of focused on something and people are talking off camera, but it's like the camera's on Indiana Jones, and it moves with him to join in the conversation because like you're hearing it, but your focus is on him because
it's very
about
kind
him.
Of intentionally shot craftsman style filmmaking, which you don't often see now, unfortunately. Even like some of the stuff which is, I don't know if it was blue screen at the time or if it was literally, I think it's the actual cutout compositing they use. Some of the stuff where they're doing the digging and there's like the lightning in the background is this very kind of old school looking stuff to us now, but very effective visual effects. It's just,
another shot when they're digging, when they're kind of on the hill, and again it's just silhouettes.
Yeah, exactly.
Great use of silhouettes and shadows in this. Another thing I was going to say, one scene that I think is great is which again tells you more about the character, is that kind of final standoff at the end where he's got the rocket launcher pointing at the Nazis and Belloc and the Lost Ark, and Belloc's kind of right early in the film is like, we're more similar than you like to think. It's like, you don't want to destroy this. Like you're an archaeologist at heart. Like you're not just going to destroy the Lost Ark for no reason.
And it's that curiosity. It's like, you need to see what's in this as much as I do. And it's like, kind of, he's playing.
And
on
he
that
kind of relents. It's like, damn, he's right.
I also noticed, kind of moving into back to the humor side of it that we were talking about. There's so many moments in this where people that aren't Indy get just absolutely shit scared of stuff. Like there's the guy that gets like scared of the statue right at the start. Like he cuts away, he's cutting the thing, and there's just a big stone head, and he just absolutely freaks out. And there's Alfred Molina when the spikes come out, and he's just like fucking scared of that. And there's Jonathan Rhys Davis also gets scared of a statue as well. And there's the bits like with the bodies falling on Marion as well. There's just so many bits where people are just like fucking scared out of their fucking ass. It's just very funny.
I guess as well that adds to Indy being the hero because he gets scared of the snakes,
but it's almost like different stuff, isn't it? But it's that thing as well. Like we've spoken before about, there's different types of action heroes, and there's the ones that are like a Terminator style one, or lots of characters that Arnie played, in the years after this. And then there's Indiana Jones, Bruce Willis, what's he called?
John McClane,
and even recently John Wick, who are the ones that they get the job done, but they're getting beaten up the whole time. Even Mando, we're talking about Mandalorian. That sequence in that finale episode where he's getting beaten up, but he's making it through.
The more like relatable hero.
Indy's just like one of the archetypes of that, and I feel like even the snake thing is just like, he does know what he's doing, but he's got this like irrational fear as well, and it makes him more relatable, I think. It's
good fun like throughout. Like there wasn't a point in this film where I was kind of like lagged or it's just like great scene after great scene after great scene. There is some silly bits in it which I'm not going to say they're negative, but it's just like that's kind of silly. there's always been the discussion of like, oh, if Indiana Jones wasn't in this, it wouldn't change the plot, which isn't entirely accurate because, you know, he found where to dig and, and various things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the point is in that, I know you're going to go on to that, but I guess the point in that sense is that if he hadn't found it, then they still wouldn't have got it anyway. So, and
they would have, if he wasn't there, they would have died on that island, and then the Nazis might have gone and got it anyway.
Yeah, and they would have been like, "What's in here?" And then everyone there would have just been piles of.
Yeah, I often see people like point that as like a criticism. It's like it doesn't need to be a criticism. Like,
no,
it's not a story of like defeating the Nazis. It's a story of following this action adventure for the fun of it.
It still happened. He still went on the adventure. It's not like he stood there and did nothing the whole time. There's lots of films where it's not necessarily the actions of the hero that change the course of history. They still,
there was one bit that I noticed this time though that I was like, that's kind of dumb. Is when he breaks into like the map room and he's got the staff.
I love that bit. It's very good.
It's a great bit, and the shot where the sun lines up, but it's like it goes through and points at a building, and it just so happens to be like the big building in the middle, and it's like that's the first place I'd look. And then he
also, if you look at where the window is behind you and you kind of make some very vague calculations, there's only a limited space where it could be, right? So.
And then he like snaps the staff and leaves it there, and it's like, you could put that back together.
Yeah. Should have snapped it and like eaten half of it so they didn't know how big it was.
Because like even if it's like a millimeter off, it'd be like, oh, it's next to that big building in the middle.
It's another bit that's just so clever, and they're throughout all these films where what is it that they're, because they only had the imprint of one side from the guy's hand, they didn't have the take one away for God or whatever. And it's like, that's just good stuff. So they were like an inch off or whatever on the height or something like that. It's just,
it is funny that scene when they find out they're talking to that guy who's just a bit silly. He's just like, oh, and it's like we're literally trying to find like the Ark of the Covenant, and you're just like, oh, yay! And then
it's
obviously
just a wacky character.
And it's got that great bit in that scene as well where Indy throws the date,
the bad dates. So
and John Rhys Davies grabs it. Bad dates, and the monkey's just dead.
Very good.
Like, that monkey's a fun character in this.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah. There's just so much good stuff in this, to be honest. Like, did you have any other negative? Because my negatives were pretty much the two brown facing characters. Really. So there's plot bits here and there, but I think generally speaking, it really stands up as a film, and it's better than a lot of the stuff we talk about here,
it's one of those that's like it's hard to like really give a review to, because it's like this is just a really good film that like everybody knows, everybody loves, and it's like I just fucking love this
and
film.
I think it's because it's influenced so much stuff, just generally movies, TV shows, pop culture. It's kind of hard to have too much of a negative opinion about it. I mean, people out there probably love lots of action adventure and hate this, but personally I don't. So I'm kind of I find it fairly hard.
I do remember on the other side, I think on PS2 I had the Indiana Jones game, which was just like a rip-off of Tomb Raider.
Yeah,
it was like
was
Tomb
it
Raider.
A different story? Because there was a couple. Yeah, I think I played a demo of that.
But like it was Tomb Raider, but worse. So it was like it's funny that like a lot of Lara Croft stuff is taken from Indiana Jones and it's reversed, and it wasn't a great game.
I don't know if they've ever made a good game, because I know there was I think it was when PS3 was announced or something, they were like, here's this new physics system, we're going to use it for a Indiana Jones game and that, and I don't know if it ever went anywhere or if it just kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, I kind of remember talking about that, but
I feel like there's one that's coming out soon, like not soon,
good.
but Indiana Jones game.
I mean, it makes sense to make one. I mean, they're making a film, so you might as well jump on that.
Yeah, it looks like there is one coming up. There's articles from the last couple of weeks. So yeah, interesting. I mean, we won't be able to cover it from this unless it comes out prior to the new film, but I think we probably know about it.
Yeah.
So
I've got a couple of bits of trivia.
Okay, cool. I've got one bit actually. Yeah.
One thing just that I didn't pick up from the looking up the trivia is obviously we hear the Wilhelm scream at one point, and I was like, yep, classic. A couple of bits I've got is Harrison Ford actually outrun the boulder in the opening sequence. He actually do that. because the scene was shot twice from 5 different angles, he had to outrun it 10 times. Harrison Ford's stumble in the scene was deemed to look authentic and left in.
Okay.
So he wasn't meant to trip over. They were like, yeah, to be fair. And the other one I've got is the film was originally given an R rating because of the exploding head at the end and the melting faces.
It's a gnarly scene, isn't it?
Particularly,
it's really cool.
Yeah, the glasses Nazis guy. When his face melts,
it's really cool. I've seen
horrible.
there's some breakdowns of that on the VFX Artist Reacts Corridor Crew channel or whatever, and they go into loads of detail. That, and there's a scene in Holy Grail, which we'll talk about as well. Last Crusade. Holy Grail. I mean, it could be called that.
Yeah, it could have been.
There's a scene towards the end of that, which is, VFX heavy. We'll talk about when we get to it.
But yeah, they had a guy's head exploding. They didn't want it to be R-rated, so they added layers of fire in front of his face to make it look less graphic.
It's such a cool scene because, like, you kind of know something's happening, but you don't know exactly. And then the chain lightning goes around. They all start fucking exploding. Then the fire comes out. The fire takes the lid up in the air. It's just so, like, it's just so much going on.
It's absolutely crazy. Yeah. It's like in a lesser film, you probably would have been like, well, that's silly. But because the film has been so great up to that point and you're so on board with it, you're just like, yeah, this is wild. I love it. You know?
I the bit I had, I don't actually have a source for it anywhere, but I listened to a podcast a while ago and they were talking about the scene with the student where she's got the love you written on her eyes.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know who it came from and how early in the draft it was, but at one point they were going to have him sleep with his students and him be like a bit more of a player, and they decided to take it out because they were like, the idea is that he, as you said, is so focused on like the subject and the knowledge side of it rather than being a bit of a kind of creep in it.
Yeah, I mean,
there is obviously the side with Marion that's kind of,
like she talks about how young she was when like he left her, and it's like, how young was she?
I think people have kind of speculated she was about 15 and I think he was about 21 or 25. So it's like, it is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many people were doing that in the 1920s. Maybe it was quite common. It's not excusable, of course. And the way he's like, you knew what you were doing. It's like, I don't know if that 15-year-old girl did know what she was doing.
Come on, Indy.
They were
also like, it's his friend's daughter.
Yeah, well, is it Abner Ravenwood?
Ravenwood.
Yeah, they were planning at one point and doing a prequel series about his adventures, and I think that was going to be a Disney Plus series up until the last like year or so.
Right.
So that's like a cancel.
Because there was the young Indiana Jones series in the 90s, wasn't there?
Yeah. Oh, God, I forgot about that. We're gonna have to do all of them as well.
I think it's on Apple TV.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
But I've never watched it.
No, I've heard interesting things. I think
it's pretty good from what I've heard.
It's River Phoenix, isn't it?
I think
no, that's just.
I think he's in some of it, but he's not the main.
Right, because it's younger Indiana Jones. Yeah, because it's like a semi-educational TV show, and I think a lot of it is like he meets famous figures from like the early 1900s.
Yeah.
So like I think like, I don't know who particularly, but he meets particular figures and he's kind of like going on little adventures and stuff like that. But people seem to like it, but I've never seen any of it. And the only thing I can think of is the opening scene of the third film.
Indiana Jones, played by River Phoenix, is The Last Crusade.
Yes, yeah. So I imagine they didn't get him for the TV series.
Yeah. So the only thing really left to ask is, did Raiders of the Lost Ark get you more or less hyped for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Progess or Progeno?
Yeah, Progess.
I mean, it's an easy Progess, isn't
it?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if this doesn't, then, what can? It's pretty...
If this doesn't get us hyped, then there's no point us watching the other three.
I mean, I'm pretty sure, I'm going to watch them all, but I'm pretty sure I know exactly where my Progesses and Progenos are going to go for these.
I think I'm probably going to be Progess across the board, to be honest.
You reckon? Okay, yeah. I mean, I'll see, yeah.
We'll see when we watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I'm especially excited to watch that one because I've seen it probably twice. Once in the cinema, once about 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I think
and
probably
maybe
the same.
bits on TV. So I am excited to go back because I reckon there's more to it than people gave it credit for.
Yeah.
And that's not a hot take at all because it's probably got prequel fever now where people have kind of come around to
I
it a bit
remember,
more.
we'll get to it when we get to it, but I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
a lot of people didn't like it because it's like aliens and stuff, and I was like, this series has been
well,
wild
I mean,
since the
literally, we just
start.
talked about lightning and fire, literally from
the Ark of the Covenant,
if not
like,
from God or heaven, from some sort of mystical mumbo jumbo within a box. Yeah,
but we'll get to that in a few weeks. So yeah, that is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I did. Let us know what you thought, and we'll be doing Temple of Doom next time.
Yeah, we will. And if you want to check out more stuff like this, we've got the Project on the same podcast channel here. Is it called channel? Feed? Channel?
Either.
Account? Yeah, and we've got all sorts of stuff on there. We have just done an episode on the Hummingbird Project.
We have.
Which was very good. So you'll find out about that and find out what we thought because we haven't actually recorded it yet. Okay, bye.
Bye.